Hey, good evening and welcome to the Nominating Leadership Open House. I'm Zara Spooner. I am the current director of nominating, and I'm really thrilled to be with you with current and former leaders to talk about the nominating process and the leadership experience. And we have some fantastic fellow members here who are going to share their authentic leadership stories. So I'm super excited for the program that we have tonight. Just as a quick overview, we'll have this opportunity. We'll hear from our president, and she'll share a little bit with us about her leadership journey. And then we'll have the opportunity to hear from four panelists this evening who've served in different capacities within our organization on the executive management team, but also on the board. And then we will, of course, have time for questions. So as we go through things, please, take note of your questions, and we'll have some open Q&A time. And then at the end of the event, I will wrap up sharing with folks about what the nominating process looks like, and then also give a chance to answer questions. So without any further ado, I will turn things over for our welcome by our president, Kathleen Riley.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm so happy that you are considering going through the nominating process. The first thing that I want to say is it's a great experience. It's the nominating process. When I first went through it, I sort of went into it blind. I didn't really know what the process was like. I was like, is it like a job interview? Am I applying for a particular position? And it was, I honestly had I hadn't done this training going into it. But and the whole idea of kind of like walking in and doing this interview, and we when we were doing these things live, you're sitting down and talking to a whole bunch of people, and it's really it's been such a doing junior league leadership has been fantastic for me. So my first time going through, I was so nervous. I was petrified, and I had done it because the nominating called me and said somebody had put me on the list of somebody who might be a good leader. And so I went through, and it was a great experience. They asked me a bunch of questions about why I had joined the league, what I do outside of the league, and it's really a getting to know you process. And what are your goals? What is it that you want to be getting out of your experience in the junior league? And so I didn't even really know what available positions there were, and going through, I mean, I can't, I don't even know how many times I've gone through it at this point, but it's a fantastic experience. And there have been times where nominating says, we think you'd be great in this position. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. So I would recommend to you that you definitely go through it. Whether or not you're slated for a position, it's a great process to go through. I mean, anytime you can get an interview process in general, that's going to serve you well, no matter what you're doing professionally. And as far as after finishing the nominating process and having a slated position, the first position I got was director of training, because I had done some training. My professional background is in fitness, so I had taught teachers how to teach, taught trainers how to train, and I kind of got matched up because there's kind of the understanding about what adult learning looks like, and but at the same time it was sort of outside of the wheelhouse of like I hadn't done leadership training, and you have all the tools given to you. You're not going to be asked to be put into a position without all of the support and training that you need to be successful. So the great thing about junior leagues in general, and in our league and specifically, a lot of other leagues don't have an elect year. All of our slated positions have an elect year, which gives you this really great opportunity to, the first half of the year, just really, Jasmine had said, like, be a sponge, where you're just really just learning. And then as we kind of go from January till June, you start to slowly take over one task after another, so that by the time you're ready to step up into your position, you've shadowed somebody who's been in that position. You kind of find your weak links. Like we all got weak links, and it's like, I need a little bit more information. I don't really have this whole finance thing down. I need a little bit of help there, and you'll get it. Whatever position it is that you're selected for, you will get everything that you need to fulfill that position. And then as far as the personal experience from it, we all know that old adage is you get out of it what you put into it. And that's so true with junior league leadership, is that it's, you're going to take on a few more hours than you do as in general membership, but the growth is amazing. The friendships that you make along the way, because you're coming in with a whole bunch of other people who are coming in as elects at the same time, and you kind of like, do you know what you're doing? I'm not sure I know what I'm doing. And you've got that really great group of support. So whether you're coming into EMT or part of the nominating council or coming in on board, you're connected with these women who you work really, really closely with. And I'll say for me, my personal experiences in those positions, you have a little bit more contact than you do sitting on a committee. So in the committees, you go to your meetings and you maybe have a few emails back and forth. But in leadership roles, you're connecting not only with the people on your particular committee or council, but the other people who are, serving at the same level as you are. And so you have a great connection with your committee or council. You have a really great connection with the other people you're coming in with. And it's absolutely, it's such a great experience. So I'm so grateful that you're all considering this, and I hope that you will all opt to go through the nominating council. And everyone who's here who are current leaders, honest to God, you send an email to anybody, you make a phone call to anybody, you text anybody, and you always get support back. So you have a whole team of women who have your back at all time. So thank you for considering, and please do go through nominating. And I will answer calls, I will answer texts, I will answer emails. And that's through, even through the process where you're kind of like, I'm not really sure if I'm ready for this. What are these roles like? I've served in a bunch of these different roles, and I will chat with you, I will talk with you. And I cannot recommend this highly enough. It's really, it really enhances your membership exponentially. So I'll pass it back to Zara. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Kathleen, for all your words of wisdom, having gone through the process so many times now. So now we get to hear from some of our current and former leaders. So for our panelists, as when it's your turn to speak, I'm hoping you can introduce yourself and highlight a role or some of the roles that you've been in. I know some of us have been in several roles that you've been in, so folks will know if they have a specific question around a specific role that they might be able to ask you. So, so with that, our first question is, why did you become a leader within our league? And I will pass it over to Courtney to get us started. Thank you.
Hi, so good evening, everyone. My name is Courtney Scrubs. I am the current Vice President of Membership. Very hard to tear me away from training. This is my heart and soul, but I've found a new home in Membership Council, and it's been great so far. This is my fourth or fifth year in the league. It just goes so fast. I don't even know. Maybe maybe one of you all, my fellow panelists, can tell me when I started, but the years are now bleeding into each other, and especially with COVID, it just blurs the lines between each year. But it's been a great. I've had the fun in working. Working with everyone has been more fun than I should. If I say so. That's number one, is that I enjoy the work that we do. It's hard work, but it also helps me develop skills that are transferable to my day job, my paid work, which is not always hard work. Right? It's not hard work, but it pays well. So I'm a lawyer, but I knew that any type of job that would allow me, volunteer work, that would allow me to work with lots of different types of people, that required high level of organization and agility when it comes to communication with people from different generations and different backgrounds and so on and so forth, was going to really help me to develop skills that would be applied in particular in my job, in my professional life. So to answer the question more directly, one, because it was fun. Two, because I knew it would be an investment in my skill development. And three, I was also just sort of told, sort of kind of. I had someone in the league that said, "Hey, I think it's a good idea for you to consider, participating in nominating." Sort of what we're doing with you all now, saying, "Hey, we see something in you, and we want you to participate in the process. Just give it a shot. You don't have to do. It's not a contract. Give it a shot. Consider it." And that was enough to nudge me to the table with all the other reasons that I mentioned. And then, of course, going through the interview process was what really sold me on accepting a role at this level in the junior legal process. So I'll be quiet now. I have much more to share with you all, but I share the time with my fellow panelists on this question. So thanks, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Howard. I'm the president-elect. So I went through the nominating process last year, and then previously I served as the VP of Community. So I went through the process for that as well. And similarly to what Courtney was saying, I think my initial push was someone recommended I go through the process. So that sort of like sparked my interest. I think I had understood the sort of slated role process fairly well, but I didn't really understand what nominating was and how it was a separate process. So I think it's great that you're all here to learn about it. I think it makes it a much easier transition. But in terms of why did I become a leader, I had spent time, I joined the junior league right after college. So I was 22, 23, and I was really interested in learning more skills that I wasn't getting in my sort of day-to-day job, especially entry level. Subsequently, I went to law school and did a public health degree. So I was getting more like education, but not practical experience. And I really liked that the junior league allowed me to sort of find the areas that I wasn't necessarily experiencing day to day, or areas that I didn't realize were interesting. I took a public health class in budgeting and management. And then I was like, oh, it might be interesting to be on the finance committee and sort of see it in practice. So I think I initially chose my placements and spent time sort of based on what skills I didn't necessarily have and wanted to obtain. But in terms of then becoming a leader, I really felt like sort of finding the areas that I enjoyed most, which initially was working in community placements, and moving up in that realm was sort of my first thought. And then I went through the nominating process and they recommended me to become president. And so now I'm serving as president-elect, which I think it was sort of a surprise to me at first, but I was very much felt like I've had the experience in the different placements to be prepared for the role. And now I'm sitting under Kathleen, who's fantastic role model and guiding me sort of towards the process and getting ready for when we eventually transition. But I am going to have to jump off early. So if you happen to want to email me or have any questions, I'll be on for part of the Q&A, but someone in my office is getting an award at the Bar Gala, so I'll have to hop off a little early for that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pendary. I also joined the league right out of college in 2009. So yeah, it's hard to keep track. All the years blend together. That was in Omaha where I joined, and I was there for 3 years. So my initial leadership experience was very different than how we do it in Boston. My first active year, I'm not quite sure what happened, but they didn't have a chair for kids in the kitchen. So they pointed at me and said, "You are going to do it." And I thought, oh no, this is not going to work out well, but it did, luckily. But then I moved to Boston, transferred my membership here. I actually wasn't all that interested in a leadership position. I really enjoyed all the different things that I got to do, was learning a lot. And then one day, one of my very closest friends in the league said, "I'm going to be the transfer manager and I want you to be my elect," because at that time that was a slated position, and she is a person to whom you do not say no. And so I didn't, and it all sort of went from there. After that, I was the founding chair of the Jeremiah program. And then I decided that I wanted to go into nominating for real this time on my own accord. I had had some great experience as a community chair. I had some not great experience as a community chair, and wanted to see what I could do with that. And then they called me and said, "We want you to be treasurer." I thought, that's not even why I came here in the first place, but I do work in finance for a living. And so in their infinite wisdom, I think nominating made a great choice, because that's one of the roles that I was most fulfilled, and the place where I feel like I really did a lot of good. So you never know where your league journey might take you, but it's always going to be to a good place.
Good evening, everyone. So I am Tracy Barber Prabhu, and I am currently the secretary. And I did not join the league directly out of college. I joined when I was 35 or 36, and I joined in San Antonio, Texas. And I really joined because I just wanted to volunteer. And in Texas, it was just a big old pain in the butt to try and get a volunteer opportunity. And someone told me the junior league offered this opportunity to where you could volunteer at all these different organizations just by being a member. You didn't have to go through the training program at each location. So I loved it. I loved my placements there, and then transferred to Fort Lauderdale, and had a horrible year, my first year in Fort Lauderdale, and did nothing but whine about it to my boyfriend at the time, who finally told me, "Look, you have 3 choices. You can either just keep bitching about this, or you can quit, or you can get in there and do something to make a difference." And I thought, you know what? I'm going to be the friggin' president. And I literally laid out an Excel spreadsheet on what I needed to learn. And this is what I loved about the league. And we will do it with you as well, but you can do career mapping. So I knew that I was missing skills. I knew that there were things I needed to learn. And I knew that I could learn things in those given different positions. So I had just mapped out a spreadsheet on all the different positions and alternate, in case, like some of the other ladies have said, you don't always get what you thought you were going in for, right? Because it depends on not just what you think you want to do, but what the makeup of the entire team would be, and where you can fit into that team and support it. So I had alternatives, and then I wanted my best friend to be president before me. So I did a spreadsheet for her too. She said no. She was not interested in my plan for her, but I did. I ended up being president. It was the most incredible thing. I learned so much. I also knew I wanted to run my own nonprofit at some point. So this was an incredible opportunity for me to learn everything about nonprofit. And then I moved to Boston, and by that point I'd been in leadership like 10 years. So I didn't know how to not be in leadership. But I was scared the first time I applied here for nominating, because in my prior leagues, it was pretty we'll sort of interview you. It was kind of loose and, kind of loosey goosey. And when I showed up to be interviewed, I was a little intimidated. It was at the board table. There was a whole room full of women just looking at me, but everybody was so kind and loving. And I loved the questions. Like, it really made me have to think about what I had learned and what I had grown from within the league. And so I was EVP. I was on with Jasmine, and Pindry was on the board at the same time. So and Sar was on my team that year too. So it was an incredible experience. I think I love being in leadership because I love to shape the direction that the league is going in. When I think about it from a Slated perspective, you don't always see the results of what you put in place, because a lot of times it's coming to, you're planning years out and stuff doesn't happen sometimes until after you've already moved on. But I had never experienced that before, right? I was a project planner at work, and I would see the fruition. So for me to learn the strategic planning was an incredible asset to me as well. So that's kind of my story, my history. I was very, very strategic about where I was going and what I was doing, and always have been. But I will tell you, I've been told no. It didn't make me happy, but I was told no. And it turned out to be the right decisions every single time. And the positions they slated me for turned out to be brilliant for me. So I trust the process. That's what I would tell you. Trust the process, trust the guidance that you get from the nominating team, because they really do know what will make the most sense for the entire structure.
Thanks, Tracy. So a number of you all have talked about the skills that you've developed through your role. So I was hoping you could expand on that a little bit. What skills did you develop, and how have those skills transferred to other areas of your life, whether that be professionally or personally?
Yeah, so I mentioned that skills development was one of the reasons why I considered leadership within the league. I mean, part of that also too was contribution. These are the skills I have. This is the way I want to contribute to the organization. But specific skills, so much like Tracy mentioned, I actually went into nominating with a different position in mind, very much focused that this is the job that I would like to do. And what came back to me was not that job. And so I had to deliberate for quite some time. And the job that was presented to me, which is the one I have now, I didn't really fully understand what it entailed at the time. So I had to really think about it, and that is actually learning now. So this is my first run through nominating, and my elect year was also a big COVID year and a transition year for me, moving from one place to another down here. I'm actually in Louisiana right now. So I wasn't a super hands-on elect. I did a lot of listening. I transition, which is what I think our president mentioned, which is at a certain point you start taking on tasks. That's not what happened with me. And so this season now, from the summer up until now, has been my first foray into this role. So I'm very much telling you or anticipating the skills that I will develop, instead of telling you in hindsight what I've developed in this role anyway. But one of those is being able to step into a higher level leadership role without knowing everything or feeling like 75% of what's going on, right? And that's relevant because in my professional life, the higher up you sort of go, the more you have to lead people who have expertise that you do not. And that is what I'm doing all day, every day in the role. Right? Like my elect knows way more than I do about the role. There are other people who've been in the league twice as long, or if not more. They know more about the organization. And so being able to be confident in what you have to contribute, confident that leadership is not about history that you know, right? You got an expert for that. leadership is about judgment. Leadership is about how you relate to people. It's about inspiring and cultivating people and leaders and being able to say, whatever role you put me in, that's what I know I can bring to the table, and it's gonna be valuable. And I can learn all the other stuff as I need to. And so the more I step out and be courageous with doing that, the better I get at it. And that will enable me in my professional life to take on that associate general counsel role or that general counsel role where my expertise is narrow, but my responsibility is broad. And I have to learn to trust other experts that know more than me in an area and lean on my team and trust my team and not micromanage. That's another thing that I'm learning is that, once you get to a certain level, you can't be in everything. You can't be at every meeting. You can't handhold everyone. You have to let go. And so that's another skill that I was developing before this role, but that this role is pushing me more and more into, and it's a super valuable one as I sort of climb the leadership ladder in other areas of my life. So that's the skills that I'm learning so far. Maybe in 6 months I'll have a little bit more to tell you, Zara.
Great. So I think the first and sort of the biggest thing for me was learning how to say no. I think traditionally I'm very much I'll take on doing too much. And I still definitely do that, but being able to tell people no, or organizations, when I was the VP of community, sometimes people would approach us with potential partnerships. And some of these partnerships would be like, oh, and you'll pay $50,000 and in return, we'll give you like fill in the blank. And I would usually take the call and then be like, oh, I don't think that's a fit, just financially or whatever else. But, I'd follow up with Tracy or anyone who sort of was on our EMT team. But I think going back to people and telling them, no, that's not something we're interested in, wasn't something that I was generally accustomed to. I think in my day-to-day job, obviously I'm an attorney, so there's partners, then we have senior associates, and I've worked my way up the associate chain, but on the whole, it's mostly figuring out how to make things work as opposed to telling people you can't do things. So I think that was one of the sort of first skills that I really had to take on and get comfortable with. I think the other thing, also in community, spending a lot of time, sometimes your community chairs don't know each other well, and learning how to problem solve and conflict resolution, in the sense that it's not as if people dislike each other, but teaching and working with people on how to sort of advocate their particular styles or ideas with someone who might have a stronger personality or someone who's just not really willing to listen to the group. I think working with individuals, that was something that I hadn't done before with people who are my own age. I've sort of worked with younger people, helping them be able to advocate for themselves, but I've never had it sort of on the peer-to-peer level. So I think that was something else that I learned in the leadership process. And in terms of transferability, I've definitely seen, I'm still working on this saying no at work, but the advocacy, I now have some associates who are under me, and we spend a lot of time discussing both when it's time to advocate for the client, but also are they advocating for themselves personally if there's something they're interested in doing. And that's definitely a skill that I first experienced working with the junior league.
Well, there's definitely the hard concrete skills like how to run a meeting, how to, set out an agenda, how to take notes, how to follow up on those action items, because that is done with varying degrees of success in the workplace. And the league really gives you an opportunity to practice that and hone your skills, because it is a skill that needs to be learned. There's also the component of, running a meeting, speaking to your team, reporting to the board, speaking at an event like that. How do you do that confidently and succinctly? And that is also very valuable in the workplace, obviously. But I think the biggest skill I don't know if skill is the right word, but the biggest thing I learned was confidence in myself. And, as Jasmine mentioned, a lot of us, work in a very hierarchical organization. A lot of us are younger. You don't get to make the decisions at work, but either on the board or the EMT, you're usually, the decision maker. Whatever you think is best is what we usually end up moving forward doing. And that COVID was a crash course for all of us in that. When the stuff really hit the fan in the spring of 2020, it was really Tracy, Kathleen, and myself on PNR looking around and saying, okay, well, now what do we do? And we did the best we could, and we did it thoughtfully. We tried to do it strategically, and I, for one, am really proud of what we were able to accomplish in those circumstances.
I'm proud too, Pendry. I don't know that I would have said that right afterwards, but looking back on it, I'm like,
oh no, definitely not at the time, but
we actually weren't that bad, right, Kathleen? So I've had such an incredible junior league journey, whether it was thoughtful on my part about the skills I was looking for, or the skills just were part of a position that I took and I was able to obtain them. But there have been so many that have been transferable early in for me. I was a trainer in a did software and training installation, and I really wanted to do project planning, but I didn't have the skills. And I was in Fort Lauderdale on our #1 fundraiser, which, if you have not been on a fundraiser, if you want to learn organization and time management and project planning, get on a fundraiser. And when I was able to go to my boss and say, look, this is what I did in this position, it was a volunteer position, but this is what I did, this is what I learned, I was able to move into a project management position with the IT company, and it became one of my favorite positions. I was with that company for 16 years, so I had a lot of different jobs, but that was a direct correlation from what I learned in the league. And it really opened my eyes up to, hey, wait a minute, it was so much safer in my mind anyway, learning it at the junior league, right? Because I could make mistakes, I could fail, there was somebody that had my back. It didn't feel as stressful as it was in the real world, right, at my job. So I thought, gosh, wow, I can learn all of this stuff in a safe environment, supportive environment, and then take it into the real world. It would be perfect. And I just started making a list of stuff that I wanted to understand and what I wanted to learn. And in 2017, I launched my own leadership training and consulting company. And I now teach, last week I taught another league strategic planning and how to develop an annual plan. So everything I've learned at the junior league, I'm able to create my own job and my own business from. So, and I know that's a little bit more unique from the perspective of just building your own business, but just like everybody else said, especially if you're thoughtful about the skills you're looking for to gain, you can talk to nominating and they'll say, okay, these are the positions. We know what skills are developed in what given position. So if you say, I'm open to the job, but I want to learn X, Y, and Z, they can actually help map you into the right position as well, which I think is incredible, because you don't get that at work, right? You can't go to work and go, I'd like to learn X, Y, and Z. And they go, well, let me go find a job for you. It doesn't work that way, right? But it does in the league. And I think that's an incredible advantage.
Thanks, Tracy.
Well said, Tracy. Yeah, well said.
Yes. I think that it's just such an important reminder that we're a training organization, right? And so first and foremost, and that's one thing that's wonderful about the elect year, and then having the year to kind of then execute your own vision in collaboration with other roles. So this will be the last question before we open it up to Q&A, so folks can start getting their questions ready. I think I would love for you all to kind of give folks just a little bit of like, what is it, like, what might this look like day to day, right? Because it might seem a little ambiguous. So kind of what does a typical day, or in Pandary's case, in past, what does a typical day look like in your role?
Sure. So it's a lot of email communication. I'll say that for sure. A ton of emails. Vice President of Membership is my email is membership. So when people have membership questions, they email membership. So I get a lot of questions that come to me, and quite a bit of those I'm pushing to Katie, who's our operations person, our staff member, and she's facilitating a lot of the transition points to membership status and whatnot for folks. Sometimes it's questions that I can answer directly, but most times the action steps is an operation step. So I end up looping in staff. So I'm actually corresponding with staff quite a bit. Now, two, I think personally, and I'm sure other people will agree with me, but I can only speak for me. When a member reaches out with a member question and they reach me, my goal is for this to be a soft place for them to land, right? So even though I'm pushing them to someone else to do, it's not like, oh, Katie can help you with this. It's more so like, oh, so great to hear from you. So glad that you're interested in being a member of the Junior League of Boston, or welcome back, or something like that, right? Because it's membership experience, your first sort of touch point, transferring in, it's your first impression sometimes. So I try to keep, be cognizant of that. When you think about the person who should really represent beyond your exec, beyond your president, about the person who can be your membership, I would imagine. I try to mentally have the right mindset. And that's important because when you're answering 300 emails a day, you can be very short and curt to try to get it done. But with this role, I find myself having to stop, slow down, and be very thoughtful about the tone, and be flowery sometimes in my communication, just to make sure that that's the experience that they have. That's one. The other thing beyond, okay, bye, Jasmine. The other thing beyond email communication is I'm supporting a big team, right? I have all these chairs and managers, and they have a committee. So really, I am not as focused on the event, or not as focused on the actual execution of a program. I'm more so focused on supporting the leader and cultivating the leader and encouraging and developing, which means now when I listen, I'm listening for how are they doing? I'm listening for how do they want to develop, and what can I bring to the table to help them do better in their job. And that's leadership. My nonprofit leadership history is about 15 to 20 years or so. So leading in a nonprofit like this isn't new, but this way of leading is new. And not new. It's been at least 7 years since I've had to do this type of work. And so, so that's another one that I should have mentioned a little bit more, but part of it is just cultivating a leader and troubleshooting. There's an issue that comes up, it comes to me, and then we think about it. I pull in, I kind of sort of have to know my team and know who knows what, and know my resources, and start pulling in, okay, I need to pull this person to the table, this person. And, I think Kathleen mentioned the beauty of one of the aspects of the beauty of the league is that people who've had positions in the past will respond to you, they will continue to support you. And I'll give you an example. Just recently, we have a first year active that is on my team leading in our active program, okay, because she's a great leader. But she's new to the organization. And I'm new to the membership organization. So we reached out to Connie who was VP last year, who's my elect, who was also a membership council several years back. And then we reached out to the person who had, her job, Coretta's job, active program leadership before, and we put everybody together and said, okay, we want to talk about these two items, and we were able to pull together all of this knowledge and to make some good decisions as a result of that. So part of my job is understanding what the issues are, understanding what my resources are, putting them all together and providing that sort of support to my team. And that's what it looks like. That's what it's been from literally from day to day since I stepped into the role.
Great. So I'm
sounds fun, right? So much fun.
So I'm filling in for Jasmine. So one of the things with these leadership roles is that you are expected to respond to these multiple emails that we get every day. Within 24 hours during the week, you get a little stretch of time over the weekend. If somebody sends you something 4 o'clock Friday, nobody's expecting you to get back to them straight away. But there is that expectation that you are, returning emails, even if it's just, I don't have the answer for you. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you. So that there is a little bit of an expectation that you're checking your junior league email a couple times a day, just to make sure you're, keeping things moving forward. And, depending on what your role is, there's cyclical times of year. So, I've been, again, structure is a little bit different, but I've been the equivalent of VP of community, VP of placement, training. Gosh, I can't even remember, but each of those has sort of different cycles. So if you've got a training that's happening one particular week, that day you might be on your email like 6 times a day. And then it's sort of like, okay, so this week there's not so much going on, so I'm going to just check it once a day. But it's definitely, you're a little bit more dialed into your particular role if you're in a leadership, even more so than you were as a chair, maybe for a committee, so that, you kind of have that sort of cyclical thing. The other thing is that I would, if you do end up going through nominating and taking a role, to always be very forthright with what your needs and capabilities are. So if you are getting married in May, that's something you want everybody on the team to know, where it's sort of like, don't come asking me to do a whole bunch of stuff 2 days before my wedding, because I'm not going to be able to do it. Or if you're defending a dissertation, or you're having a baby, or you have a sick parent you're taking care of. Again, everyone will always have your back. If you have any of these life-changing roles going on during your year, you wouldn't be the first one and you won't be the last one. We've all, I've been on boards where the president's pregnant, the president just had a baby, the president just started a new job, or, any one of those VP roles, the same sort of thing. We had, unfortunately last year we had, 3 people on board had parents who died during, COVID. So always come out and say, give me some help, because help will always, just like Hogwarts, help will always be given to those who ask for it. So always ask for help, and always give that help. Like you'll be the one asking for it at some point, and sometimes you're the person who's kind of like, I could probably help out with that project. I can kind of jump in and fill somebody's shoes for that day. So yeah, so I think that's the, if as you're kind of going into this leadership mind, just to kind of keep in the back of your head that there's a lot more expectation that you're going to be involved with checking in on your emails, calling people back, communicating with people. So that is it from me.
I echo everyone on the emails. It's a lot of the hours that you spend is sifting and sorting through all of that. And it comes from a variety of different levels as a leader. It's, members asking questions, staff that needs answers, other leaders that need your input or an answer from you. So as Kathleen said, you don't want to be the bottleneck of what's holding up everyone else's work. As treasurer, a lot of my time was spent working with our bookkeepers, just keeping the trains running on time. We have staff that needs to get paid. We have taxes that need to be paid. We have events that need to be paid for. We have revenue coming in that needs to be booked appropriately. All of the nitty gritty of that. It was also communicating with my elect and my finance council on the roles that they played in all of that, and communicating with the other leaders in the league, what their budgets were, answering their questions, all that kind of thing. But I would say the most important part of my job at the time was communicating with the board on what our financial status was, and giving the EVP and the president the tools that they needed to make the decisions that needed to be made. And ones at that time, given COVID and the financial impact that that had, they really needed the most up-to-date and accurate information to decide how to move forward. And it took, and like Courtney was saying, it took a lot of time to be strategic in the tone and in the messaging of how that played out, because I didn't want to be the bad cop that it was always saying, no, 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 we can't afford it, even though that was truly the case at times. As a leader, you do really need to think long and hard about what you need to get across and how is the best way to deliver that.
You are always very diplomatic, Pintry. At least in the final product, you are always very diplomatic.
Got a little hairy at the end, but I tried to be nice about it.
It did. It did. You know, I've been very blessed to have been on the operational side and the board side. And even as EVP, you do both, right? So you sit on the management team and you sit on the board. So you're strategic and looking long term, and you're also involved in the operational. If you're looking at a slated position that is operational, meaning it's on the management team, I encourage you to really think through what you're willing to commit to and what's important to you from an involvement level, right? So again, nominating can help you understand how much time commitment you might be looking at, right? So executive vice president, hands down, easy 20, 25 hours a week. It was a lot. And I don't know that I understood that quite clearly when I went in. I don't think I asked all the right questions. I made it work. We figured it out. I had flexibility to do that. Not all of the positions on management were that intense. But if you ask nominating, hey, you know, look, I think my max that I'm really going to be able to commit to is 5 hours a week, they can kind of help guide you into which position will make more sense for you, because there is huge flexibility. I've had VP positions where I really was just, you know, making sure the train stayed on the track. As Pintry said, I had people doing the bulk of the work. I was just there as the gatekeeper to help keep them moving and really to develop a sense of community and a strong team of support. So really encourage you. I mean, I can tell you about secretary if anybody wants to know any questions about the secretary role specifically, or a VP role or EVP role. I'll give you the details. But I think the biggest thing I would tell you is be honest with yourself about what you can do. And as Jasmine said, learn to say no, right? If someone comes to you and says, I know you said 5 hours, but we have this 15-hour position for you, you have to know if it's going to fit in your life. As Kathleen mentioned, I think there's huge flexibility with the junior league, and that we'll work with you, we'll support you, we'll make sure that, you know, if life changes or, you know, it gets tough. And you also have the flexibility of saying, like I had to tell Kathleen this year, look, I took a position for a short time that did not allow me to be available during the day, Mondays and Tuesdays. I taught class 8 in the morning till 6 at night. I could not get on my phone. And as long as I was upfront with her about that, we made it work. We figured it out. So it's not as, what's the word I'm looking for? Strict is not the right word. Stringent, maybe. It's not like unflexible. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. There is a little bit more rigidity rigidness to a management or a board position, but it's still very, very flexible and manageable if you communicate.
Hey, thank you so much. So now this is like our open Q&A. So we really want to hear from those of you who have questions, maybe about anything that's been shared or the process. I'll also give an overview of the process kind of from start to finish before we wrap up the call this evening. So folks you can feel free to raise your hand if you have that functionality. If not, you could just unmute and ask your questions.
Did we scare everyone away with the email?
Hopefully not.
We had to be honest and talk to you about that, about the communication aspect of it.
Yeah. Yes, we will also take questions in the chat as well too. I'm happy to voice over those as well.
I was just about to sing the Jeopardy music.
So how about I maximize our time?
Wait.
I will share my screen and walk through the process, and hopefully there aren't any questions. That'll give people some opportunity to ask some questions while I just walk through this process real quick. So you could drop those questions in the chat, and then we'll make sure we get to those. Okay, so here, so kind of like how do you go about doing this? So the first thing is that one, I would love to, you can self-nominate or you can nominate someone else through this process. So feel free, either works. And so basically, as folks have shared so far in the panel, that through the application, really we're seeking to get to know you, getting to know your strengths, your growth edges, where you're seeking to grow and develop with our mission as a training organization. What's great is that we meet some fantastic women through this process. That's actually a plug for if anybody wants to consider nominating as a role. We get to meet some fantastic women and then really think about how do we leverage the strengths of those going through the process and how do those strengths meet the needs that we have within the organization. So applications are open now, and this cycle applications close on November 19th. After which we will reach out to acknowledge your application. We'll be interviewing later on, kind of during the winter months, but we do interview all applicants. And just a reminder that interviews are not specific for the position, but really more designed to be holistic. But you can also indicate what you think you might like to go to, but as folks say, like kudos to Tracy saying, trust the process, that sometimes we might, as we kind of think about how the organization works together, you might be offered, if you are offered a role, it might be different than what you had thought of. So nominating the process is open to any active 2 or sustainer member. The position descriptions are available on the website. I will also send an additional email after this workshop, so probably tomorrow, with all this information linked, so it's easily accessible at your fingertips. All right, and then so some people might be like, what is the interview process like? As Tracy says, that it may seem intimidating, but we're really all very nice and kind people. So don't let the interview intimidate you. We'll reach out to schedule interviews at a mutual agreeable time. We are hoping to be able to speak in person, but we'll also retain a virtual option for those who would prefer to have it virtually. And really, we're just getting to know you. We have some set questions, and we also always leave the opportunity for you to ask questions. So really, we find it as a great way to just get to know some of the fantastic members that we have in our organization. This is just a reminder of these are the positions slated by nominated. These positions are also all listed in the position description document, and where Tracy was saying, like, with the specific, with an estimate of a time guideline, because this is based on our research and what other former leaders have shared with us, but given that it's not going to be exactly that, but we think hopefully a really good estimate of what the time commitment is. And through that interview process, that's where you can indicate to us, if it's like, I can get 5 hours a week, that would be really helpful for information for us to know for the process, so that we can make sure that we're setting leaders up for success, but also the organization up for success as well. Okay. And then right now, as I mentioned, we're accepting applications for this cycle till November 19th. We'll start interviewing candidates kind of in the winter months, where once we kind of have closed applications, we'll start looking at interview dates. And then we hope to make slate decisions. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together in mid-February, and to announce the slate. So the slate is what we our listing of leaders that we recommend to membership. And so we hope to be able to announce that in early March, so that that could be voted on at the GMM in the spring. All right. And so just a couple reminders. One is that like central to our what we've talked about, where that this is a safe place to try something out. This entire process is confidential. So this is a safe place to put yourself out there, because your participation in the process is confidential. And so we ask that you not share if you're going through the nominating process, and we will also keep that confidential. So again, if this is something you're just even curious about, let's apply, let's have that conversation, because it does provide that safe space to explore. I mentioned that's just a reminder about the cycle 1 application deadline. And then if you have any questions about the application or the process, we have email bealeader@jailboston.org. That is our confidential email. So at the end of the nominating process, we destroy all those emails to maintain your confidentiality. But that's how you can reach out to us. So I will stop sharing, and hopefully we have some good questions in the chat. All right. Okay. So I think I see a question from Renee about what do you do when someone is not meeting the expectations? Renee, I might just need a little clarity. Nominate from a nominating end, or from a leadership, you're the person in the role and someone on your council is not meeting expectations? Both. Okay. So from a nominating perspective, we are really here to support the process. So one, we slate, and we're here if people have questions to making sure people are getting the right support. So we're more like a connector. So if someone reaches out and says, oh, I'm struggling, we'll go have you talked to your EVP? Have you talked to your president? Can we be a conduit for that communication? So those are always people. And Tracy, you could speak to this more being EVP, but if there was some a slated leader not meeting expectations, that's a conversation I would expect the EVP or the president to have. Just, I think, one, to check in from a care perspective, right? Because sometimes you don't know what's happening with folks. So check it in first, is how are you doing, and then having an expectations conversation. But Tracy, do you have anything else to add?
You're spot on from the perspective of, yes, first checking to just see what's going on. I mean, this is a volunteer position and life changes and, just things happen. So for me, my first instinct and what I always taught my leaders, which is first check in with them. Is everything okay? Is there, anything we can talk about? But we do hold people accountable, right? I mean, you have in any position, whether it's slated or appointed, you've made a commitment, and it's okay if life changes and you can't continue forward with that commitment, but we do like to check in and make sure that you are being supported in the way that you need to be in order to fulfill the job. But there are times where you may have to have a difficult conversation with someone. And Pendry can probably speak to this as well. She's had some situations where sometimes they're not the greatest. But what I do love is, one, we provide training, usually, I assume it would continue, on how to have difficult conversations and how to have productive conversations with people about expectations. Pendry and I have role played occasionally on conversations. So you can go to your peer level or EVP or president and say, can I talk this through with you? So we'll give you the skill. And there have been times where I've had the conversation for someone because they weren't comfortable with confrontation and they were the silent observer. So that's even possible as well. You can partner with someone to have those conversations as you grow that skill set.
Yeah, I mean, things happen. Things, don't work out in a variety of situations sometimes, and that's totally fine. I would say if that is either you get into this role and it's not at all what you thought, or something changes in your life, ask for help. Talk to your president, talk to your EVP. And if, you can't do it, then you can't do it, and they'll find someone else. If you're in a situation where you are the leader and someone you're relying on isn't pulling their weight and doing what the team needs for success, again, ask for help. There might be someone else that can step in. There might be a sustainer advisor that can give you some guidance. There are all sorts of resolutions, but as someone said earlier, this isn't a contract. You're not signing your life away. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But the main point is say something. Don't ghost. Don't, take off and never look back. Just reach out, ask for help. Tell people what you can give and what you need.
And to that, I can add to that is that's really a training point, right? Like how to respond to that when you're working with people, because it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. And how to speak up for yourself, how to find balance between not wanting to let people down, but also not wanting to under deliver because you're moving, and when to stop and what to say and whatnot, is skill that you sort of have to really learn how to do it well and to get comfortable with doing it so the train keeps moving. And I think it garners a lot of respect with your team when you can do it well on both sides. That's a skill for me that I've had to try. I'm still learning in when to say when. As far as what to do when I'm working with someone who can't show up, the empathy thing has been big because I've been there. But I would say further, especially in an organization that's focusing on training women, is checking in, yes. Also, how can we adjust what our mission, what our objective might be, so that this person isn't left behind? So I haven't had to do that in my current role with the lead, but I recently had to handle this with another one of my chapter from my undergrad, where we had my treasurer, my fundraiser, my secretary just MIA, looked up there running for office, just gone. So I was like, okay, what do we do? And what we had to basically come back and say, okay, we have to pivot, right? have to reorganize what we're doing so that we can be supportive of our members. We don't like the way, because what we're doing is about them. They are the doers and the recipients of the work that we're doing, right? So it's not we're doing in spite of them. We need to switch this around in a way so we can support them. So we're going to dial this back a bit. We're going to maybe take a couple events off the table, because it's not about the event, right? And then we're going to try to find a way to be supportive to those leaders that had to step back. And if there is something that they're struggling with, a skill or a task or something, what can we bring to the table in the area of partner? Is there a resource somewhere that we can connect them to help develop them in this area? Maybe so they can come back, or maybe so that next time they're in a role, they're better at this particular point. So I think it's the mindset shift that I've sort of myself to is they don't become the enemy or the outsider because they let us down. They are still the people that will accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. I hope that was clear, but.
Well, hopefully we answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So, so with that, we've come to the end of our program. I want to thank Pendary and Tracy and Courtney, and I know Kathleen had to jump off and Jasmine had to jump off, but just to thank them for sharing their time and wisdom and talents with us. And hopefully we have maybe sparked or inspired you to think about going through this process. It could be really rewarding. And I think I'll just echo again, we're a training organization. We do need folks to step up to leadership so that we could continue for another 115 years and more. So we do need people to put their hand up, as Tracy said, and say, I am willing to dig in and do my part and help out. So I hope we've hopefully inspired you to consider the nominating process. And I'll be following up with folks to reach out. So that's a great way also to, if you have any lingering questions or things that we can clarify. But I am super excited and we look forward to having a great nominating year. So thank you again and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.